Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Sturgis, and I am privileged to be the CEO of the New York State Network for Youth Success. I want to welcome and thank you for joining part 2 of our Lights on New York virtual series, creating after-school partnerships to leverage student success. The first part of our webinar presented an overview of the current landscape of after-school, summer, and expanded learning opportunities, especially amid COVID-19. And provided the opportunity to familiarize yourself with the Kids Wellbeing Indicator Clearinghouse, also known as the Quick Map, and how after-school program information on the map could help you in your daily work. The webinar recording is available and can be accessed at the link included in the chat box. The second part of the webinar will discuss and share best practices for developing and implementing effective school community partnerships. Today's webinar is hosted by us, the New York State Network for Youth Success. We are the statewide after-school network in New York, working with 49 other state after-school networks in the National After-School Alliance. We are also the state affiliate for the National After-School Association, the New York State lead for the National Girls Collaborative Project, and also the backbone agency for the New York State Community Schools Network. The Network for Youth Success is dedicated to building a youth-serving system that increases the quality and availability of after-school and expanded learning programs, and supports all programs that promote young people's intellectual, social, emotional, and physical development outside of the traditional school day. These programs include those that serve youth in kindergarten through 12th grade, take place in schools or community-based settings, and occur before and after school, during weekends, holidays, summer breaks, or during the school day through partnerships with community organizations. The New York State Community Schools Network advocates to develop, promote, and sustain community schools in collaboration with government, local school districts, and community partners through a diverse coalition of community-based agencies, parents, teachers, and statewide advocates. The Community Schools Network champions effective community school policies so that children and families can thrive. We would love to know who's joining us today. And so please just take a quick moment to introduce yourself, tell us your name, your role, and which part of the state you are joining us from, and put that right in the chat box. I see we have a lot of folks from all around the state. Lyme Central, Rome. Great, we're so glad to have you all here. On today's webinar, we will present an overview of funding available to address learning loss and the role of after-school and community schools in responding to learning loss. Then we will share the value and benefits of school community partnerships. All of the links and resources that will be discussed today have been compiled in a resource document, which we just put in the chat. I would especially like to note the webpage, purposefully designed as an information hub to answer questions and provide resources on leveraging after school and community schools to address learning loss, which we also just put in the chat. Please feel free to use the chat box to answer questions throughout the webinar. We will do our best to address them at the end as time allows. In the case that some questions are not answered, you can email Trudy Morgan at trudy@networkforyouthsuccess.org. Now let's start with a question. What does partnership mean for you? What is the difference between a relationship and a partnership? Please use the chat box to share your thoughts. Great, we have Queens about the effectiveness and impact of the strategic collaboration between schools and community partners than to share how this works in practice. And so we are glad to have 2 school superintendents, an educator, and 2 community partners join us today who will share how they have leveraged after school or the community school strategy to maximize student success. But before we get to them, Trudy, our policy director, is going to give an overview of funding to help schools recover and build resilience.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And thank you everyone for joining us today again for our second part of our webinar. So as the pandemic persists, it's clear that families, young people, and schools need broader community support to safely meet academic and social, emotional, needs across the state. Local school districts have been allocated game-changing investments through the phased funding of foundation aid and significant funding from the federal stimulus relief to reimagine every New York student's experience in a high-quality, well-rounded education. The American Rescue Plan funds provides an enormous amount of money, it makes available about $122.8 billion nationally for public education through a third round of the elementary and secondary school emergency relief, or as many have heard, it referred to as ESSA funds, of which New York received a whopping $8.99 billion. These ARP funds provides an enormous opportunity to invest in high quality after school, summer, and other expanded learning opportunities. And the community school strategy by setting aside about $2.2 billion in funds specifically to address learning loss. Local school districts were required by the ARP law to reserve at least 20% of their allocation, which is approximately $1.6 billion in New York, to address learning loss through the implementation of evidence-based interventions such as summer learning or summer enrichment, extended day, comprehensive after-school programs, or extended school year programs. The remainder of the learning loss set aside, specifically about $629 million to the state, were diverted back to some school districts in New York in the form of learning loss grants, hence providing almost no direct support or relief for after-school summer and expanded learning programs in the state, which unfortunately had largely been left out of previous COVID-19 funding. A breakdown of the distribution of funds and how much each school district received can be found on our learning loss webpage that we're going to be sharing in the chat box. The ARP allocation came after ESSA 1 and ESSA 2 funding under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities, known as CARES Act, which was enacted in March 2020, and the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, which is known as CRESA, in December 2020. And it also came at a historical time when the state has agreed and committed through a phase-in process to fully fund foundation aid, which is the state's core education aid formula over the next 3 years. And so here lies the opportunity. New York schools and school districts can leverage the power of school community partnerships, strong collaboration with after-school, summer, and expanded learning programs, and utilization of the community school strategy are key strategies to address learning loss and help our students not only return to normalcy, but also provide a meaningful and important pathway to accelerate their success. But why should we even prioritize these partnerships in the first place? Well, Ali is going to tell us a little bit more about it. So Ali, over to you.
Thanks, Trudy. School community partnerships are a key strategy for connecting critical supports with youth and with their schools. We all know that COVID-19 has presented unprecedented obstacles to students' learning, health, and overall well-being, and it will take strong commitments, resources, and coordinated efforts to ensure that youth have the holistic support they need to catch up and re-engage effectively in school and community life. In order to do that, there need to be smarter, flexible, and more efficient ways that we deliver critical services and programs to address learning loss. Afterschool and other youth-serving partners bring together many strategic partners that are well-positioned to help youth reach their full potential. After-school, summer, and other expanded learning programs have been crucial in helping young people and their families, especially amid the pandemic, where many have adopted high-quality programs to support youth and their families. They've worked to meet families' basic needs, providing daily living and educational essentials to families, as well as health and social and emotional wellness services and support. They address learning loss by providing access to high-quality in-person supplemental education and enrichment programs, such as homework help, hands-on science and engineering activities, and opportunities to participate in performance and fine arts. These programs serve a diverse range of students, especially those who need robust academic, social, and emotional support. Also, Evidence shows that high quality after-school programs provide a $3 return on investment for every dollar spent. After-school programs are a lifeline for working families with deep reach in historically underserved communities. For many families, after-school goes beyond after school. Community schools are a collaborative strategy that organize community resources to best support the needs and the success of students. As a place, the community school functions as a hub, providing services tailored to meet the needs of students and families. Community schools address the needs of students in a holistic way, not just their academic achievement, but their overall health and well-being, to create the conditions for learning, growth, and success. Using various funding streams, they mobilize resources including social services, health services, mental health services, expanded learning opportunities, and family engagement. In many cases, there are separate delivery systems for addressing the needs of New York students and communities. The community school strategy merges those systems, provides a return on investment as high as $11 for every dollar spent, and works in both urban and rural settings. Adopting the community school strategy will empower schools and communities with the right tools and resources they need to confront academic, social, emotional, mental health, and other non-academic needs that have been aggravated by the pandemic. While school learning and separate programs and services may be effective in isolation, an aligned focus and collaborative approach can compound positive results. School community partnerships engage community actors who bring in essential resources and expertise to schools. These resources include longstanding family relationships, teaching artists, culturally competent educators, health and social services connections, or many other kinds of expertise tailored to a particular school or community. This can bring an infusion of new energy, new ideas, and new resources into the work of changing students' lives. They also bring existing infrastructure through established high-quality programming and services, which schools and districts can effectively utilize and build upon, hence not reinventing the wheel. After-school and community partners allow schools and districts to leverage community strengths. Many of these partners have deep and historical ties in the communities they serve and are often members of, that they represent and know their community needs. They can be key liaisons in developing strong relationships with families and empowering their engagement and voice in the affairs of their young ones, as well as strengthening student leadership and engagement. Community organizations also benefit from collaborating with schools. Schools can help organizations provide seamless support when the school day ends by coordinating services that align with schools' learning curriculum and management. Community-based organizations can also benefit from utilizing existing spaces in school buildings to run programming that serves students from their community, helping these partners work towards their mission to improve local outcomes. School community partnerships can be integral to sustaining important wraparound services and resilient infrastructure for schools in a way that goes beyond base funding. Schools and community-based organizations can contribute staff, expertise, and sometimes financial resources that not only improve but transform what the school day looks like for a student. Partnerships with after-school, summer, and expanded learning programs and building on the impact of expanded learning opportunities through the community school strategy can promote enrichment, strengthen engagement, and leverage experience to help foster student growth, development, and care. I would now like to turn it back to Trudy to introduce our speakers to tell us more.
Thanks, Ali. So as Ali mentioned, we are actually going to shift gears and talk about what these partnerships look like on the ground. And we are so glad to be joined by school leaders and community partners who will help us see even further why these partnerships are essential and how they can be leveraged effectively. And so today we are going to first hear from Albany School Superintendent Karita Adams, and then afterwards, Rome City School District Superintendent Peter Blake and teacher leader Rob Wood will share more about how their district is utilizing the community school strategy. And then our very own June Mudo, who's the regional network lead of the Wayne Maximizing Out of School Time, will talk about an exciting initiative their district embarked on this summer by leveraging partnerships. And as you listen, I encourage you to know the important elements of effective partnerships that stood out to you as well as any questions you have for the speakers, because we would take some time to pose questions to the speakers as well. And so I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Kelly Adams. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so very excited to be here and be able to share some of the things that we are doing here in the City School District of Albany with regard to our community schools. And I'll even branch out a little bit more because some of the things that we may not have been able to address with our community schools, we really worked with our partners to look at how we use our ARP funds and what some of those possibilities are. So right away with our community school structure, we have what I would really boast as true partnerships, and it's been able to help us meet the needs of our students and our families, so going beyond those school walls. So as you know, we have a clinic in each of those schools. We have a medical clinic where people can come in and get services, but what we were able to do to leverage that is through COVID, we've been able to partner with Whitney Young and with Albany Med with regard to helping to provide extended services with regard to COVID testing, as well as looking at vaccination clinics. And for us right now, our athletes, we did support the Department of Health with regard to our students that are participating in high-risk sports needed to be fully vaccinated. So our high school also has a clinic where we partner with Whitney Young, and through that clinic, we've been able to do the physicals for our athletes, as well as get them through the cycle of vaccinations. We know that that's only one component, but we've also seen a mental health component where we've been able to work through that social emotional learning. At our elementary level, we use Second Step, and at the secondary level, we are implementing the Yale University program of Ruler. And so we wanted to make sure that those things were available, not just for faculty and staff, but how do we expand that knowledge? And we're not there yet, especially with Ruler, because we just started that. But the goal is that some of that social emotional well-being will be captured through that clinic and provide services for our families. And if we can't do it, then at least we have the partnerships to help us do that. So if we're connecting with Trinity Alliance, if we're collaborating with Northern Rivers with regard to looking at some of that social emotional support for our children. So I'm going to jump to the ARP funds. And one of the things that we did, because we realized that, you know, no one can do the work alone. We do have to have support. And this is where that true partnership has come into play for us. We allocated a portion of those dollars for an RFP process within the district, where our different community partners could now apply for funding to assist us with after-school programming, to assist us with Saturday schools, to look at intramural programs, because we want the wellness, the health and well-being of the whole child. So intramurals definitely plays a part in that. And so we're looking at how to expand the role of our physical education teachers into the intramurals piece of after school, so that students can have an academic tutoring component as well as an intramural component. And that would help us close that learning gap. We've also looked at collaborating with one of our inspiring community partners, which is the Albany Symphony, so that they can come in and to environments where students, you know, they have music class in school, but they may, you know, be interested in something a little different. So we're partnering with the symphony where they are coming in to deliver lessons to our kids, and it's like an after-school program and club. We do partner with the symphony where some of our students who are in the advanced music classes, they do a debrief and conversation with the director, conversation with David Allen Miller, who is our director, our conductor, and then they do a post-concert review. So the students are getting that full component of, you know, before the performance, during the performance, and then after the performance. And so we have partnered with our symphony, we have partnered with Boys and Girls Clubs, we have partnered with the YMCA, and those partnerships are starting to look a little differently now because we know that it's not just one component, it's tutoring or it's the social emotional and something else. And so I just wanted to share just that little tidbit to get the conversation going. But we had about 21 respondents to our RFP, and 12 of those respondents have been approved to go through the contract process with our Board of Education.
Thank you so very much. That's quite a lot here in what you're doing to support students in the Albany School District. So thank you so much. And we're going to come back to you, hopefully, with some questions. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Blake to also share a little bit about the community school strategy in Rome School District.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys having me and Rob here today. A lot like my colleague here in Albany, we're using a lot of our funding and our community partners for a lot of the same things. We have a lot of the same community partners. I would say the biggest thing we've done with some of this funding is engaged our community partners, mostly the YMCA. They're our largest kind of community partner that can help us with students. But they've been intricately involved with before and after school care here in Rome. And that's been a huge, I'll call it a saving grace for our teachers. Rob may have some more to add to that as our teacher representative here, but teachers through the pandemic are just burnt out. Their administrators, we're used to working into the wee hours of the morning, on weekends, on holidays, we're used to those things. The teachers generally were not used to working into the hours of the evening that they had to work throughout the pandemic. And what that did was we found in Rome, most teachers didn't have the physical capacity to continue to participate in after school programs and do some of that work. They simply just needed some time for their families. They needed some time for themselves. So that's where engaging our community partners came in big time. The YMCA has traditionally run a lot of our programs, but they stepped to the plate, added a lot of programs, intramural things, civic government type activities, taking kids on field trips to different, Albany, Washington, essentially helping them with job work. They were huge in that process. And then on top of that, we have a group here in Rome called they're now called the Connected Community Schools Initiative, which a few years ago started off as the Rome Alliance for Education. But they are connected with AFT. They're a nationally recognized community schools program who have picked up the ball on the other end. So we've got the YMCA helping out with some of those before and after school care programs, tutoring, instructional pieces. Our community schools agency is picking up the ball on things related to healthcare, dental needs, food insecurity. We have gigantic food pantries. Rob might be able to tell you off the top of my head, I can't tell you how many tons of food they've distributed throughout the pandemic to help families that are just in need of basic needs to survive. Clothing pantries that we have all over the community for students and adults that might need something if they're trying to go to a job interview. We can help out adults and families that might need that. So we've got all kinds of assistance happening thanks to community schools, and it wouldn't be possible if it weren't for our Teachers Association. The Community Schools Initiative in Rome was started by a small factor of our Teachers Association probably about 7 years ago now. And they really got the ball rolling. I happen to be walking into the chair of the superintendency right at the same time that they started exploring it. So I take zero credit for this work. I simply was the guy that was in the right place at the right time that had the ability to say, yes, whatever it is you have to do to make this work, I support you. You tell me what you need and we'll make it happen. And I'll say 5 years after starting our community partnerships through community schools, we've probably increased our ability to help people tenfold. The ARP funding that we talked about earlier has been a huge benefit. A lot like what they did in Albany. We turned around and engaged our community partners. We're able to increase our contributions to their ability to support us, which in turn increases the amount of things that they can do. We increased our ability to fund our community schools initiative, which in turn brought more people into the buildings to work with families and students right there within the schools versus kind of having to do things more remotely. So I can't say enough good things about what community partnerships, community schools can bring, but I also can't speak more highly of our Teachers Association here in Rome, who really, it was our teachers that spearheaded this project, 6-7 years ago. And we've been fortunate, going back to your initial question of partnership, we've been fortunate enough to really build a great partnership between the school district, our community schools organization, and our Teachers Association. And it's one of those things where every month there's something new happening that's beneficial for the kids and families of our community.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Blake. I'm going to turn it over to Rob, who is also from the Rome school district, city school district, to speak a little bit more or build off what Superintendent Blake has also talked about.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. And my plight is to help any community that's looking into considering building a community school. Every community has needs, and community schools is a place to address those, an avenue to address those. It was mentioned earlier that it could be a big city or it could be rural, and that's so the truth. Even in our district, we have 10 schools spread out pretty vastly, and the needs in each of those buildings is very different. And through various processes, we're able to address those needs. And referring back to what Peter mentioned, we have over 100 partners. So if you're looking to grow it, we had a vision 7 years ago, and we thought we knew what we were going to do. And 6-7 years later, it turned out nothing what the original blueprint was, but it's an extremely high success. And I'm going to share somewhat of a specific story where we had a student of mine who was running a survey and trying to get into doing a science project after he was really shaken up by attending an assembly where the speaker was trying to hit home that there's avenues for kids to go to if they're thinking to cause harm to themselves, and identity crises. So I immediately reached out to the superintendent and said, hey, we've got some issues here. And he put his seal of approval on it. And I then began working directly with our director of counseling services. And the student, to his credit, spoke at a board meeting saying we need more social workers here. And to the credit of the district and the finances that came in, we were able to supply additional social and guidance workers within our schools. And through the efforts of the young lad and the union and the district, we built a youth mental health training. And the people that we ended up going to was our community schools leadership. And so this kind of thing went full circle, and that we didn't have to really build the support network. It was already there. And so subsequent to this taking place or kicking off over the summer, there have been numerous trainings, and we're about to implement at the high school, because the students have to be a certain age to do this, where they're going to have some peer counseling, and we're going to set up education. So students in crises know much better as to what the avenues are. And with our community partners and with the support of what the hiring services from the district, the support networks are there. So it's a great story to be able to address the problem. And a lot of this was working in collaboration. And fundamentally, the silver bullet was, in fact, our community schools partners.
Thank you, Rob, for sharing. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn over to June, who's also going to talk about her initiative during the summer and how to leverage community partners.
Good morning, or afternoon, everybody. I'm June Muto. I live in Wayne County, New York. We're a very rural county situated on Lake Ontario, between Rochester and Syracuse. There's about 11 schools. I think there's 11 school districts in Wayne County. We're very active with about 6 or 7 of them, working on the others. Our challenge was to put together a summer recreational program for the children of working parents in Newark, in the Newark, New York community, which is in our county. We were asked by the Chamber of Commerce to put together a program that would run from the end of school to the beginning of school in the summer. So it was a 9-week program from July 6th through September 30th, or September 3rd, excuse me, from 6:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We embedded by working with the Newark School District. We had summer school students that would come to our program, leave and go to summer school and come back to our program. We also accessed the, Newark has a recreation center, and they ran a program 2 days a week for different age groups that ran for 3 hours in the morning, that we were able to get our kids to and from that as well. We wanted to keep it very affordable for parents because if it was cost prohibitive, it wouldn't be there. We needed very creative scheduling. We needed a good quality trained staff, and we needed to engage these children for a long period of time through high quality program activities. And you and our partners helped a great deal in doing all of this. We leveraged our community partners because we needed help with so many things. We had the Wayne Community, or Wayne Community Action Program handled our money issues. I mean, the collection of money, the payment of bills, and doing our payroll and managing that. Our staff came from a lot of different places. Peaceful Schools helped us, obviously community schools, and we got them to engage in lots of different programs for the kids. We even had the fire department came in one day and sprayed all the kids with water because it was so hot. We had police come in and do safety programs with the children. I have a long list of community partners, but community schools, the way in most, we really feel like we're an arm of the community schools program here in Wayne County, and we're doing some really wonderful things. We have community school coordinators in each of our districts. So some of the strategies for getting partners and working with partners is, research your local agencies. What do they do? What can they offer? Use very timely, effective communication. Don't turn around the last minute that you need help and ask them for help. Give them some time to plan, and maybe they'll come to you with things that they can do. Transparency. I think you need to make sure you know what we would expect from them in giving programming or our help. And I think it's also important that they know what our obligations and expectations should be on our end. And follow through. Follow through is big. A big thank you, appreciation for the service they provide. Thank yous with pictures from the kids are always a big crowd pleaser. And it just, everybody loves to be appreciated. And I think just taking that step with a thank you makes a big difference. So our community partners that we used during this, and I actually came up with another one, was Reliant Credit Union, which is our local credit union in this area. They were very helpful, and they actually sponsored a scholarship for some of our students that they actually couldn't afford to come. But the Wayne County Community Foundation, we were able to secure a grant from them. I already mentioned the Wayne County Community Action Program, Wayne County Community Schools, the Newark Community Chamber of Commerce. We worked very closely with the Newark Central School District. We actually worked out of one of their buildings and in a park, which is adjacent to it. They provided access for feeding the kids, as well as some of the transportation to and from with the summer school and getting some of the kids to some special recreational activities. We also have Cornell Cooperative Extension who came in and did some projects with the kids. SNAP Ed came in and taught them nutritional projects. Peaceful Schools, we actually had Peaceful Schools come in near the end of the group of them, and they did a play with the kids, and the kids loved it, and they were quite good actors and actresses. And then Newark Fire and Police Departments, Wayne County Sheriff, and then we were, the Wayne Most was helped to facilitate a lot of what happened. So I guess my vision is just, or my advice is to get involved with your community and support the work of your partners. You know, if they have an event or something going on, you know, go and see if there's something you can do to help or support them in what they're doing. And then they're more likely to come back and help us as well. Do what you say you will, and how can you help them? Communication, you know, call them, talk to them, explain what you do. Always thank them on their work, and have patience, because it takes time to build strong community partners. My vision is that they would grow. We could grow with and through our partners, so all of our children and families may benefit through our coordinated resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, June, for sharing about your initiative. I would love to bring the speakers back together a little bit and ask a couple of questions. There was so much that was discussed from each one of you in terms of how you are working with partners. Many of you, all of you are working with a wide variety of partners. These are mental health providers. These are after school summer expanded learning programs. These are social service providers, working with even the law enforcement agency. So there's a wide range of partners that you all engage in. And one question I had for you all was, what is one main challenge you encountered or have encountered as you have either pursued new partnerships or looked to strengthen the existing partnerships that you have? And how did you resolve that challenge? So this question is open to anyone who'd like to respond to that.
Okay, I'll go first. One of the things that we found here in Albany that was a challenge, and I'll look at it from a different lens. I'm going to go to pre-COVID and then during COVID. Consistency was a concern with us before COVID. We are a small community, but we have I'd say over 80 community partners that we work with on a regular basis, but that consistency of staffing, and I guess I'm thinking more and more along the lines of like when we are reaching out to our different agencies for some of the mental health support that we saw a big need for our students, that consistency of staffing. So sometimes when our students get used to one person and they build that relationship, then, you know, just due to the nature of the work, then that person is gone or they get a promotion or they've gone to another job. And now the student has to get to know someone different. So that consistency was one of the things that we dealt with before COVID. I would say also, and I look at our pre-K program where we really rely a lot on our community-based organizations to do that. The funding for our pre-K programs, we are a district that was an early adopter, so our funding is not to the same level as those who come in now with pre-K. And so maintaining that quality staff when we invest in them with regard to training, et cetera, so that we can have that continuity of instruction for our pre-K students, our youngest learners, where we know that it is very, very critical. That's one of the things that we've seen before COVID. So now let's layer that with COVID and where we are now, it has only exacerbated that concern or that challenge with regard to having consistent staffing in those areas where we really do rely on our community partners. We have built that relationship very strong with those organizations, but when we talk about that consistency of staffing to continue the programming, that's one of the challenges that we faced. And so how did we overcome that? We looked to use our ARP funding, and we know that that is only 3 years. So while we're using that funding to help support some of those endeavors, we know that we have to also plan on the other side, how do we sustain that? And that's where we go with our advocacy with our legislators to make sure that we increase the foundation aid as promised, to make sure that that stays in the forefront and doesn't fall to the rear view mirror, because that funding will be essential to us continuing that particular piece.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to jump in? Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, thank you. June's advice was spot on in hitting the answer to this question, and that is be patient. So in Rome, we were struggling. We were getting people to climb aboard the bandwagon. Our mayor has been very supportive, local government and various agencies, but we were unable to initially hit the nail on the head as far as what it was we were going to be doing. And part of it was luck. We lucked in because we had someone join our team, Melissa Royce. She's our current director. And fortunately, she brought with her knowledge and connections to the table. So once we got involved with the right group of people, one is Central New York Healthy Homes Network, Safe Schools and Healthy Students, a local agency. It really helped us lift off the ground. So some of it is luck in getting the right person in with perseverance and patience. And another problem that was huge for us was funding. And so most of the funding came initially from union support, quite a bit of money, $750,000 from the American Federation of Teachers. We were also getting support from NYSET, and locally we were providing a little bit, but we were able to solve that problem to some extent in working through BOCES and developing a COSER avenue. So patience, I think, and perseverance are key words here, and luck.
Thank you, Rob. I'm going to go quickly to the chat box to see if there are any questions there. Let's see. Oh, so I see Chrissy is actually saying she appreciates what Superintendent Adams is saying around the revolving door and after school and for community organization is a big challenge. Right now, her after school program partners are also suffering big staffing shortages. Thank you for noting that, Chrissy, and that's definitely something that we are recognizing too, and hence the power of partnerships, right, and pooling resources to be able to maximize supports. So I actually have 2 questions, but I'm going to ask this instead. We know for sure that the COVID has disproportionately impacted some of our communities, especially communities that have been historically underserved. And we know that the American Rescue Plan funds is emphatic or reiterates support for all communities, especially those who need even further supports. And so I'd like to ask, what are some strategies that you have employed in your partnerships to reach equitable outcomes for the students, the families, the individuals that you serve? And this is also open to anyone who'd like to speak a little bit to that.
I can respond to that one first here, Trudy. I think for us in Rome, the key stakeholder for us with community partnerships regarding that topic is our NAACP. We've worked really hard for the past 3 years with our local NAACP and their leadership on a lot of different things. We've had a lot of tough conversations about what is in our community related to underserved populations. We've had consultants come in. We've done equity audits going back 3 years now, looking at our classrooms, having outsiders come in and look at our teaching practices, looking at the things that are on our walls, looking at the words that our teachers are using. And it was really uncomfortable at first because you feel like it's an invasion of privacy, but the outcome 3 years later has been really a tremendous partnership with our local NAACP and talking about not necessarily pointing fingers anymore about what the needs are, but being able to openly together as a partner, as we talked about before, identify what the needs are, and then what are the next steps to kind of fix that. You know, what is that? What type of professional development do our teachers need? Do our staff need? What do our principals need to be able to help our teachers understand the curriculum that they're choosing or the materials they're choosing to teach their curriculum, and how can that, for lack of a better term, alienate an underserved population or a student? How can we leverage some of our work with our community partners to assist students and families? What we've noticed in Rome is related to underserviced. It's our students from disadvantaged economic situations that tend to be more of the students that get left by the wayside that we have to address. So when you start to understand that and you see that, you can engage community partners to help support those students and families. Going back to food insecurity, right? Clothing insecurity. What are the basic needs that a child needs to be able to come to school? And then on the flip side, working with our teachers and our staff on understanding that what you see in front of you might not be what is really happening in that child's life on a daily basis. And how can you keep that in the back of your mind as you're trying to teach them algebra? You're trying to get through your daily job responsibilities, but sometimes the reason why a kid can't learn is not because they don't understand the math, but because there's something bigger going on, and that it's up to us as the adults to have those conversations. So I think for us, though, it started a lot with our local NAACP and identifying together jointly what types of issues are there and how do you tackle them moving forward.
Thank you very much. Will anyone like to add to that or also share a little bit more about their partnerships?
I'll share a little bit more about partnerships that address the family. One of the things that we've been able to do is we look at families learning together, and we've been able to collaborate with our Families Learning Together program with a couple of our elementary schools, and they offer monthly STEM and ELA events where the families learn the skills to support their students directly. And then we do some of the project-based learning activities with the parents right alongside the students. And that's been pretty rewarding because you know, the parents get to engage in the same things that their students are doing. And then the students, in essence, become the teacher. And you know how students love to show the adults what they know and teach the adults something new. So we've been able to see that. We've looked at some academic parent and teacher teams where this quarterly, during each quarter, families take a deep dive into something very specific about the academic data with their child. And then we look, while learning through that lens, some specific tools to support this child at home. And we found that that has been very, very helpful. We also have looked at we have a huge focus on STEM. And so looking at STEM and then the STEAM activities that we can incorporate so that we get the whole child, and looking at how to build and strengthen that partnership with home and school. And a couple of organizations, we have also worked with the NAACP. We've also worked with Black Child Development to help run some of our programs where the students then get to showcase what they have been doing along with their families. And I would say the other piece is, as we look at equity, we're now at the point where we are operationalizing equity so that it becomes the way that we do business. About 3 years ago, we started with defining equity so that we could put everyone on the same page collectively. And we did that. That was an entire year process. And so we looked at community members, parents, teachers, student forums, administrators, teachers, and support staff, looking so that we can define what equity means for us as a district. Then the second year in 2020, we looked at the evidence of what we thought that definition was. So how did we actualize equity? And so now that we have a common definition and we have some common examples of how we actualize it, this year for the 21-22 school year and beyond, we will be looking at how do we operationalize equity so that it's no longer something that we're going to always refer to it, but we just know that that's the way in which we do business. And so academically, we looked at how do we build student voice through student engagement in their learning, and then also working with our schools to develop, at some schools right now, we have student governments where students are learning to how to utilize their voices for advocacy. And in those schools where we do not have student leadership groups, mainly at the elementary level, we're looking at how do we build that into the program. Again, operationalizing equity for our students to develop their voice and advocate for themselves.
Thank you so much. I wish we could go on and on in talking about this, but our time is very close to the end. And so I really want to thank you, Superintendent Adams, Superintendent Blake, Rob, and June, for your time with us today. I think there's a lot that has been shared here, and everyone who is part of this conversation has taken quite a lot from this conversation. And so, as we all have heard, there's so much value in working together to support the whole child and meeting their needs the whole day. And there are key components that should be present to make these partnerships effective and durable, many of which were shared from our speakers. And some of these key components must be prioritized. So we have joint partnerships between schools and community partnerships and partners, including feedback from students and families. Superintendent Adams just talked about student voice, clearly defined roles within the program, including supporting a full-time on-site program coordinator, especially when we think about community schools. Consistent communication, this is something that June also talked about, between partners, including frequent face-to-face interactions, data sharing between schools and community partners to help inform decisions, alignment of program goals with school needs, and joint professional development opportunities, which include both school and community-based organization staff. And I think perhaps the most important, and this is something that Rob talked about, the persistence around joint commitment to ongoing program improvement to make sure that we are adapting, aligning, strengthening, improving. So all of you here have heard how this works in practice. And if you're unsure of where to start, we have provided resources for you, but particularly want to talk about a few. The network has a guidebook that provides an outline of some of the questions and possibilities that superintendents, principals, and other school leaders may want to consider in establishing or strengthening their partnerships. It also provides step-by-step guidance on the planning process, which highlights how schools and community partners can effectively engage families and students in the planning process. We also have a resource from the Quick Maps, which is a map that has a map with data information to help school districts also find community assets. And actually from that, we have pulled together a list of after school partners schools can collaborate with to accelerate students' recovery. This is actually per school district and also categorized according to county. So that information will be put in the chat as well. In any year, all of New York students should be provided with equitable access to a well-rounded education. And this year is no different. Our schools, our communities, and our families are presented with an opportunity to redefine what the school experience looks like through effective partnerships to not only rebuild amid the pandemic, but to strengthen the infrastructure that is needed to sustain the strategy as common practice moving forward. And we know that leveraging the role of after school, summer, and expanded learning programs, the community school strategy can help guarantee this. I really want to thank you all for joining us today. If there are any further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. As a friendly reminder, to conclude our virtual series, we're going to be having our virtual celebration of after school on October 28th. We're going to start with our tweet storm in the afternoon of the 28th. So we absolutely invite you to join us, and then later on in the day at 5 p.m., we are going to celebrate after school for all that they are doing and how they've risen to the moment, especially amid the pandemic. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on October 28th.